I'm David Lombardo, and you're listening to WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. On today's show, we're highlighting an audit from the State Comptroller's office, which identified room for improvement in a housing program designed to serve New York's veterans with disabilities. One of the key takeaways is that funding available for home and accessibility repairs is going unspent in some cases. For more on the findings as well as next steps, we're joined remotely by Tina Kim, Deputy Comptroller for the State Comptroller's Office's Division of State Government Accountability. Welcome back to the show, Tina.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Well, before we get into what you found out about the state and local administration of the New York Access to Homes for Heroes Veterans Program, can you explain what this initiative is supposed to do for low and moderate income veterans living with disabilities?
The program is set up to help veterans with disabilities stay safely and independently in their homes. It provides up to $25,000 to provide accessibility improvements, emergency repairs, or even fix basically code violations within their homes. So really, it enables them to stay within the community.
And in a given year, what sort of budget are we talking about? Millions of dollars, for example?
So for the period we looked at, which was like 3 cycles of the program starting in 2022, ending at the end of 2025, it was $3.3 million. But as you pointed out, of that $3.3 million, only 36% of it was actually spent.
There's often, though, a lag in when money in New York State gets appropriated versus when it actually hits someone's bank accounts versus maybe when work is done. So when you look at the unspent dollars, does it seem like it's actually a problem unique to the administration of this program, or is that just reflective of the way government projects are funded?
So I think if you look at the long-term history of this program has been in place since 2015. It was made into law in 2018. The program originally was allocated $19.6 million. And over the course of the program, only 31% of that funding has actually been spent. So this is a long-term issue with this program, which I think that, the audit identifies some reasons why that has actually occurred.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the shortcomings in both the oversight and administration by the local program administrators. What seems to be some of the reasons why there are unspent dollars from year to year?
So the first reason would be outreach, and there's two different types of outreach. So it's initially getting people interested in the program and applying. The contracts are basically offered every year. So it's getting applicants to basically apply for the program. So one of the points that we make in the audit, like if you look at New York State, there's roughly about 173,000 disabled veterans. And then you look at the counties that have over 5,000 disabled veterans, so it's Erie, Monroe, the Bronx, and Onondaga. Only one of those counties actually had somebody apply for the program within the period that we actually looked at. So the other three counties, Erie and Monroe, have the most disabled veterans within the program. So you didn't have a single applicant for that program in the 3 cycles that we actually looked at.
Well, in regards to the promotion of the program, the Hochul administration pushed back on the idea that maybe they should be developing or implementing other marketing and outreach strategies, saying that they already have kind of a robust outreach to prospective applicants and are doing what they can to loop in various partners that might be engaging with either municipalities or veterans directly, although they do say in their response that they will continue exploring means to, quote, further promote current awards and encourage future applicants. Do you think there is a lot that they're not doing? Is there any recommendation that you have specifically in terms of how they could improve their outreach efforts?
So one of the things that I would point out is we actually reached out to the program in terms of administrators. It can actually be a local government or it can be a not-for-profit. So we reached out to many localities and who potentially could basically be an administrator for the program. And many of them had never heard of the program. and were actually expressed interest in the program. This is me being very geeky about it. But there's a huge difference between when you're talking about things. Like you can do like outputs and outcomes. So you can, do all these meetings, you can sit at all these conferences, but in the end, if you don't achieve and get people interested in the program, then, those outputs don't really matter because you haven't actually done what you're trying to achieve, which is basically have the program in areas where there's disabled veterans, and then further, be able to basically serve this community. Again, that number 173 disabled veterans, the four top communities with over 5,000 disabled veterans, you only have a contract for one of them. And the three other of them, they didn't even apply. You didn't get a single not for profit or locality applying in those communities. So what I would say is you do really need to look at, what you're achieving as opposed to telling me I went to this number of conferences, I sat at this many tables, because really what you want to achieve is you want to basically be able to serve disabled veterans. I think everybody agrees that this is an important program. And I think everybody agrees that there's people who could benefit for this program, yet you're not reaching them. And, that's something that you need to think about, because if you're doing all of this and you're being unsuccessful, you have to think about why you're being unsuccessful.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're speaking with Tina Kim, Deputy Comptroller for the State Comptroller's Office's Division of State Government Accountability, which looked at the administration of a housing program designed to serve New York veterans with disabilities. Well, in addition then to a lack of uptake in the program, what other issues did you find with the monitoring or administration of the program that results in not all of the dollars being spent in a timely fashion?
So there's two different types of outreach. There's people administering the program, and then once you get a contract, making sure that people know that the program is actually available. So nine of the programs that we looked at, so we looked at 10, actually had a marketing plan, which included that, they were going to take various steps like putting the information on their webpage, and only two of them actually followed through with that. So you have an issue in terms of making people aware that the program actually exists, so veterans know that what's available. The other thing that you have is, the monitoring of the program itself. The way this program works is for every administrator of the program, the first project that they have to basically get approval for that, how they administer that first project that they run with in the program before they can start other projects. And what you found is that that was not occurring on a timely basis. And, the monitoring was, a little at the beginning, a little at the end, but there were long delays. So, for example, I think the audit points out for one of these first project files, they were submitted 19 months into a 24-month contract. So if you can't start any other projects and you don't submit that project information, it delays every other project. And the audit found, like throughout the contracts that we looked at, that there were delays, that people weren't hitting their milestones. And this requires you to do monitoring, to basically follow up with people, understand what the issues are, and then basically work with them to fix it. There was also issues in terms of, people not feeling that there was enough guidance. We had issues with some of the bidding and also with the conflict of interest policy. But overall, strong and better monitoring and basically better guidance could help improve the timeliness of the program and also basically ensure that more veterans can be served.
Well, as you looked under the hood of the Office of Community Renewal in the Hochul administration, did you find that they have the capacity for more aggressive oversight and monitoring? Or is it possible that, like you said, taking a look at the start and end of a program is really all they have the capacity to do, given how the personnel might be limited?
So I would point out the response to that recommendation. because one of the things that they actually did was instituted an improved monitoring plan with quarterly reporting, better visitation, and, and desk reviews. So that was in response to the recommendation. So I think that that answers that question. I think, a lot of times basically audits can be important, and I give them credit for being responsive to the issues that we raised.
And what about the conflict of interest that you highlighted? For example, I think there was a contractor involved in the program who was maybe the sibling of one of the local program administrators. Did that seem like that was something that should have been caught based on the conflict of interest requirements or rules that are already in place? Or does that highlight a need for additional rules or additional oversight of conflicts?
So there already is or was a conflict of interest policy. It's something that should be part of your oversight. But if you looked at the other example in the report, one of the other administrators actually didn't realize that there was a requirement for a conflict of interest policy. So it has to be something that you look at when you're actually doing a review. And it's something like that's the point about better guidance, better training, having people understand the rules that are actually in place. Because again, you saw the, issues related to the bidding as well. Those two areas are critical to program integrity. People want to know that, program dollars are well spent and for the purpose that it was intended, because it's a critical program.
In announcing this audit, the State Comptroller's office put out a press release and highlighted some statements of support from a handful of state lawmakers, which made me wonder, has the legislature, at least as far as you're aware, which has oversight powers over executive agencies and spending like this program, have they done any sort of review of this initiative that's supposed to help veterans with disabilities? Or was your look at this the first sort of substantive oversight of the program?
So what I would say is the four individuals who commented on the report are all on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And so they are people who are very interested within this program and, want to look more carefully at the program, which we applaud them for doing that.
But as far as you're aware, the Assembly and Senate respective veterans committees, they've never held like hearings into the administration of the program or looked into why money that they've authorized isn't being spent in a timely fashion.
So I don't know the answer to that question because when we're doing an audit, we're looking at what the agency has done. That's not something that we necessarily look at. But again, we appreciate their interest and support in the findings of this audit.
Well, finally, because some of this money is going unspent from year to year, what does that mean for the unspent dollars? Is there an opportunity to spend them in a future fiscal year, or do they ultimately disappear and need to be reauthorized in the future?
So again, that is a question that, you know, I would basically have to check on the
Okay.
answer to that question. But the one thing that I would say is this program is statutory. This program has been funded since 2015. And as we have discussed, it's actually, a critically important program. And I think that basically, in terms of hopefully the attention that the report has achieved in, this broadcast will help people pay more attention, make people aware that these dollars exist, encourage people who are localities and not-for-profits apply for a contract, and for veterans who, qualify for the program, who are disabled and low to moderate income, encourage them to basically look for the vendor in their area that potentially, they can apply for the funding.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with Tina Kim. She's the Deputy Comptroller for the State Comptroller's Office's Division of State Government Accountability, and we will link to the audit into this program at capitolpressroom.org. Tina, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell and Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.